Do you think there is a danger that if when this war kicks off, that Trump would try to enact some wartime powers and consolidate control, or are institutions strong enough? Because this has it happened in the past? I mean, during the Civil War,
Yeah,
Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, and there's political
right.
prisoners, things like
In
this.
the
But
First World War too, I mean, there were some real violations of civil liberties. There's no question about it. I think there is a danger, and he's shown this tendency to just be very impatient with institutions and laws in general. He's in favor of the executive order as a solution or as a kind of an instrument for dealing with all problems instead of working with Congress to get legislation passed, which is what he should have done, like in the case of the tariffs, because it really is Congress's province. And if he had done that, I think you could have a more solid, probably more carefully worked out tariff system that might have made sense and that would be perceived by the world and by U.S. businesses as being semi-permanent, and then would really have the effects that you hope for, right? The idea is to bring investment back to the U.S. And if businesses see, well, this is not just Trump, waking up one day and deciding to do something, and he may very well reverse it 3 months from now. Um, they look at it and say, oh, this is going to be in place for years to come. We can actually make some plans accordingly. We can invest this $1 billion in a factory here because we're sure that we'll have, this tariff protection for that period of time. At least, theoretically, and I think quite reasonably, you could believe that that would happen. But he didn't do that. He just, again, he went to the executive orders. And we've seen that, I think, also with ICE. There's a real impatience with procedure. I think ICE completely has a right to arrest people and deport people who are illegally in the country. I mean, it's a matter of law. It's not like they're acting above the law if they do that, but they have actually ignored. They've gone beyond that. And, we don't have to talk about the recent violence, but just there are a lot of people that have been grabbed and deported who actually had a right to be in this country. Maybe not a lot, but just even a few. I mean, that's rather alarming. There's just this impatience with actually following laws and procedures. And I think that really starts with Trump goes all the way down into the agencies below him. So yeah, if we get into a real war, and this could turn out to be a real war rather than one of these made-for-TV midnight operations, there is that risk. Again, I could see Trump doing that.
Something about the United States is that we always said, this is a place where we don't have kings. We have institutions. There's a process. There's a system. But increasingly, it doesn't feel like that at all. Hold on, my dog is trying to break out. Give me 1 second. Okay, back. Yeah, so I was saying, like, it doesn't seem like the institutions that we thought are supposed to, do the process of declaring war, enacting these executive powers, like, it doesn't seem to be working, right? It is odd that it does feel like so much is just on the whim of what Trump feels. And that's not how it's supposed to be. That
Right.
wake up and like, oh, I hope our great leader doesn't take us to war today, or doesn't decide to be in a bad mood and try to deport more people or whatever it is. It's like, this is odd, right? This isn't the way that this isn't the way the country's supposed to work. But has it been like this for a long time and it's always been a lie?
Yeah. Well, no, this is, this is not all Trump by a long shot. Actually, there's been much discussion and of the growing powers concentrated in the presidency, which really the powers that the president shouldn't have according to our Constitution. So there's talk of I remember even years ago, decades ago, talk about this Imperial Presidency. Probably the best known, let's say, falling away from the Constitution is the failure actually the failure by Congress to declare war. The last time that was done was in World War II. And so that goes way back. And now everything is a police action. Clearly, like the Korean War, the Vietnam, those were real wars. And there should have been a declaration of war. and it should have been really debated in Congress. But it wasn't. And there is a move now, I think, by, again, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna to force a vote on the upcoming Iran conflict, and hopefully to, thereby the hope is to restrain the president. But I don't think, even if they manage to pass it, and they probably won't, unfortunately, just most of the members of Congress are just have really ceded foreign policy and war-making powers to the president. And they shouldn't have done that, but that is something that has happened over the course of years and decades.
Do you think that if this Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna actually get this to vote on whether or not we go to war with Iran, that Congress would probably vote for it anyways, even though that the American people don't want this?
I'm afraid so. I think it's pretty safe to be cynical in this case. It's just that.
Well, it's that AIPAC map that you can see where it shows,
that's a big
members that
part of
have
it,
money bought by that bought by AIPAC.
Right.
And it's just the whole Congress.
Because let's be honest, there's actually no reason. I think, again, it would be a mistake on the part of Israel, but the Israelis, certainly the Netanyahu administration is in favor of this war, and they're pushing for it openly now. And, the reasons that are given for the war, which vary from, day to day, depends on when you ask Trump, they're all connected to Israel. They're not connected to the U.S. Your ballistic missile programs, we don't want missiles that can reach Israel. Okay, that's Israel, right? Your allies, we call them proxies, but they're allies. Like, you have to stop supporting your allies. Hezbollah, for example. Again, that's an enemy of Israel. It's not an enemy of the United States. It's all about Israel. There's no question about it. And yeah, you would hope. I don't think we're there yet. Maybe this war, if it happens, and it looks like it will be the true wake-up call, especially if it goes very badly, and there's a very good chance that it'll be the wake-up call, again, because this is Trump's complete lack of preparation. There's always an effort to convince the population that this war is necessary. That's usually what leads up to a war. And he hasn't even bothered to do it. He's been too lazy to do it, or he's not even clear in his own mind why he's doing it.
Well, I think he probably doesn't want to do it, but he's just being forced to do it.
Yeah,
so I think it's hard to get the messaging out.
Right. I think, he's somebody convinced him, like, okay, see those brave people in the streets of Tehran. We've got this great plan, just move in a few ships there and, we'll do something like we did in Venezuela, and bam, 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 the government will be toppled. And he said, yeah, that would be great. And then he got there, the insurrection had been suppressed. And it became clear that, okay, none of these made for TV, in and out missions, that wasn't going to happen. But he had the ships there already, and they began to work on them and say, okay, you can have negotiations, but maybe to pressure, I'm just speculating, but I could see this happening, to pressure the Iranians, you got to bring in more ships. And, but that just creates its own momentum. And then meanwhile, he's being pressured again, by all the usual suspects, both in the media and within his administration and the lobby and the Israeli government. They're all pushing him in the same direction. And it looks like he's saying, I think it was yesterday, that, okay, yeah, if we're negotiating with Iran, but if, things will be really bad, or use some sort of, it'll be really bad for them, if they don't reach a deal, and it'll be really bad in probably 10 days is what he said. I think at another point he said 2 weeks, but then we're getting these leaks from various agencies of the U.S. government saying that it's more like 72 hours, and that was 24 hours ago. So I don't know, it doesn't look good. That's all.
Yeah. With Trump looking at it, you said a potential like wipeout during the midterms, and also this Epstein stuff that is not going away. There's this term now that we use to call the elites. We say the Epstein Class. That's a bad label to have, and I think it's very fitting. So I like using that Epstein Class. But if this is the case, then do you think this is also why the pressure is so extreme for Trump to do this now? Because then he understands, like, we may not be able to do this after the midterms. This Epstein stuff is starting to bury us all. And I mean, Israel as well. Israel's trying to do its best to say, "Oh, this is not. It was Russia. It was Russia. It's nothing to do with us." But it's very clear.
Yeah, I don't think that works.
It works on some people. Some people just will eat up anything.
Yeah.
It's anti-Russian. But
I think they were already anti-Russian and ready to believe it. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But anyways, it's just I think it's not. They can't distract from it. And there was recently, I don't know if you saw on X, it's breaking that from these documents that were released, these Epstein documents, that Israeli government officials installed surveillance and security in Epstein's house. So there's emails showing that.
Yeah.
So it's just it becomes clearer and clearer. It's like, okay, well, this is an Israeli operation, right? If they're the ones that are coming here and installing it, who's this blackmail for? What's it for? Yeah. It's becoming clearer and clearer who Epstein was working for, where his allegiance was.
Right.
I'm sure he was a free agent in many ways. We can try to distort it, but we understand what his relationship with Israel was.
Right.
And he's a Zionist. He believes in this great Israel project. This is the Ehud Barak basically lived with Epstein. It seems like he visited him so many times. Right. There's all these email correspondences, and the Israeli government, from the Israeli consulate, apparently, like, we're installing this surveillance equipment for this blackmail material.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
If this gets out, and then all of a sudden, aliens are coming, and then, come on.
Yeah. Well, I don't have much to add to that. I think there's a very strong connection between, I mean, it's beyond that. I think it's safe to assume, you don't have absolute proof, but it's safe to assume that he was an Israeli intelligence asset. I think that's probably the right term to use. He wasn't an actual agent. He was an employee of Mossad. And Mossad is, they actually denied that he was their agent. But they were, again, they were careful in what they said. They didn't say that he wasn't an asset. And I think that that's probably correct. And he probably did work for other agencies. He was just part of that. We all know, that kind of
the Epstein class.
The Epstein class, exactly. And
it's crazy.
And I think a lot of those people do work with intelligence at various times in their lives. They have all these connections, and with governments and with criminal organizations, and that's that murky world of power networks that intelligence agencies find so useful.
Right. I mean, and also you saw, I'm sure, the news that the UK arrested the former Prince Andrew from Epstein. It was because of selling state secrets, basically giving state secrets to Epstein. But now we have an actual arrest, and I think this is putting a lot of pressure now on the United States. The UK kind of threw the ball in the US courts, like, okay, we have the first arrest related to the Epstein. Now it's time for America to start making some moves as well. And it's clear that we don't want to do that, the Epstein class obviously doesn't want to.
Right.
So this pressure is building and building, and it's not going away. It's getting larger and larger. And we're actually seeing some, the first person finally arrested in the UK. Now, when we're going to see it here. And it's like what Thomas Massey said. It's like, you'll know that my bill to get these Epstein, this thing released is working when we see rich, powerful people being perp walked and being put in jail, like in handcuffs. That's when you know it's work. And we haven't seen that at all here in the United States. And people are screaming for it. And what is Trump going to do? Aliens and war with Iran,
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's is going to get him out of the hole that he's in.
Yeah, but he can be sold that story. That's what I think is like when you're in this situation, this is what the way that I kind of understand it. It's like, if you're in that situation that Trump's in, it's like, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
Well, if the aliens don't work,
you can kind of look at it as a Hail Mary pass. I mean, just possibly this will be a successful, we have to admit it, that the Americans might succeed. Maybe they have some card up their sleeve, maybe they, and at least I think that by any really objective measure, it's not going to be successful. But perhaps it's something, something that'll be quick enough and, cause enough damage in Iran that Trump can claim success. I don't see that. I can't imagine how that will happen, but sometimes you can't imagine. You usually can't imagine what does happen. So just say, just for argument's sake, that he actually, succeeds in this. I still don't think it's going to be a big help, but he's hoping. This is his Hail Mary pass, and it's similar actually for Netanyahu. Again, he's faced with the corruption charges, but also he's under a lot of scrutiny over October 7th and his responsibility, his failure to be prepared for it. Why did it happen? Why was our guard let down? That's the question that the Israelis are very fairly asking of their government, and very pointedly at Netanyahu, and it's causing them political problems. And then there's also the pressure to go ahead with phase 2 of the Trump peace plan, and he doesn't want to do that. So he too has a kind of an incentive to go for a Hail Mary pass. In other words, to behave recklessly, to go down the route to war. And that, maybe if he doesn't actually get war powers, it's just that in a wartime situation, everyone in Israel from the left to the right, they all defer to his authority more than they normally do. And they're willing to set aside all those domestic issues and again, rally around the flag. So I think both presidents are probably hoping for something similar. We'll see.